Welcome to Across the Pond. Man, that sounded very lackluster. I promise I'm more upbeat than that, but dude, I've been talking for a couple hours as of recording this intro, so sorry about it. Anyway, welcome to Across the Pond. This is the podcast where I talk to strangers from around the world. Literally no agenda. We just join a Discord call or a Zoom call and we chit-chat. And this was definitely one of those chit-chats. We talked for a solid hour and a half about really good things. You'll love this one, as I did, so please enjoy. This is Dylan. I speak with Dylan. I'm not going to spoil anything else. You got to listen to it. So listen to it. I'm not sure. Hello?
What's up, my brother?
Hey, what's up?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. This
Good.
is fun.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this is just a little too early, because we did agree at 6. I was like, I'll shoot my shot, see if he's a little bit available.
Well, technically it's 8:42 for me, so we are 2 hours and 42 minutes late, but it's okay. I forgive you.
I'll accept
No, it's
that.
good, man. I've had the whole evening kind of open, so earlier the better, I always say.
Yeah.
I don't always say that, but I'm saying it now.
Well, hey, I mean, here's the thing, and this is going to sound really bad, but I mean, if you can get it done sooner and enjoy the rest of your evening, then why not do it,
I mean, that's kind of where I sit. I like to just get it done so I can move forward and then it's in the past, actually. That's where I want to put things. So.
Yeah. Well, cool.
What's up, man? How's your Friday?
Oh, it was a Friday. It was one of those days to where it was super rainy and stuff, which was nice, but then it cleared up kind of, and it got weird. I'm a delivery driver for Amazon, right? And so you would think that I would hate the rain, but I love the rain. And
where you're in Seattle? Where are you at?
I'm in Seattle area.
Seattle, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So rain is pretty plentiful and abundant here. We get it quite a lot in the wintertime, but it was one of those weird days where super rainy and stuff, and then all of a sudden it stopped and it got kind of cloudy, like a mixture of sun and clouds, and it's just oh, why do you got to be like that? Why can't you just rain? I just want the rain. That's all I want.
Choose one.
Yeah, please.
It's easy. Yeah
Exactly.
That's how I feel. I'm in North Carolina now, and we are having this flippy floppy thing happening where one day it's, today, for instance, was kind of beautiful. It was 65 and we had the sun out, but then now that the sun is down, it's 35 degrees. And then tomorrow it's going to be 70. But then I think by Monday, we're looking at 40 degrees in the day. And so it's just back and forth. It's back and forth. And so in the middle of fall right now, it feels like we have these days of summer where you're like, this isn't fall.
Yeah.
And then it'll shift the next day. Total opposite, 180. Next thing you know, we're looking at, 30 degrees. So I'd rather just choose one and stick with it.
Yeah, we were having days like that for a long time because usually, like I was saying, wintertime it's supposed to do nothing but rain. That's just how Seattle's always been. But for whatever reason, there was just this weird time of just super warm weather, sunny weather, no clouds. And then the clouds and stuff would come in and it would get really cold for 2 days. And then the sun would come back out. It's almost almost like Mother Nature doesn't understand what season it is.
Well, so to counter that, I was going to say the opposite. I was going to say, I don't think we understand the planet. I think we have this this idea that we have this grasp on things, and we just don't, we've been here for such little amount of time. And then we just act like we know exactly what's happening, and I feel like I can, throughout my entire life, I mean, not really, but throughout my entire conscious adult life, I've just never trusted weathermen because they just don't seem to ever, they never seem to really say the right thing, regardless it's a 50-50, at all times. And so I think we're young. I think we're a young species. And I think the planet is just kind of volatile. I think the planet's going to do what the planet's going to do, and I think everything that's happening globally right now is a very good example of that.
Yeah, no, the thing that really baffles me though is usually, and I'll say this, the last 2 years or so, the seasons have just been so strange. You know what I mean? It seems like just recently the seasons are not the seasons. And to kind of just reiterate what you said, I think it's just we don't know what's going on. We're just so young, I guess, as a species. I don't know. I guess it depends on your view on the planet and like humanity in general. But it's
Well,
like,
I think it comes back to not only are we very infantile, but also we make the mistake of trying to label everything. And I'm a sucker for seasons. I love, transitional phases. I love fall. I love when things are like moving and grooving and you can kind of see things shift. And it's clear that there is a shift.
mhm.
It's clear that we should have sort of a rough kind of idea of how the seasons change and how temperatures change throughout the year. But I think the problem we have, and this, you can blanket this over just a lot of things, is a very general statement, but we make the mistake of trying to put labels on things and being like, this is how it is. This is exactly how it is. Try and fight me on it. If you disagree, you're wrong. You're a science denier or whatever. And I just think like, that's kind of, I love science. I love biology. I love being able to understand things, but I think we do make the mistake of trying to like black and white things and trying to blanket statement things and being like, this is how it is. It's like, well, fall is not fall. It's not the same fall every year. We have a different fall
Yeah.
every year, and then we get adjusted to what we expect fall to be. And then it all comes back down to, our expectations of how things should play out and how things should move.
Yeah, and it's just like it's becoming more evident, especially in today's day when like we have nothing else to do, so like all we're gonna do is just like throw out accusations and all that stuff, which is one of the big reasons I feel like just people are so just one-sided today. You know what I mean? Like especially with the whole and of course not trying to get into politics or anything, but like because that's just so recent.
It's all politics. It's all politics.
Gosh, I know, but it just like it just proves the fact that like we just have to label everything, and if it's not labeled, then we find a way to label it.
Well, we find a lot of comfort in that, and I understand that, I'm very big on, symbology, and I'm very big on having things have meaning and having things sort of mean something in like a little encapsulating way.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want to be 100% on anything because I just don't think it's possible. I think you should always leave at least like 0.01% to be open and to be able to have yourself be proven wrong, And I think a lot of people right now, especially, and I say this a lot, but I think we're reluctant and we're one-sided. We're what we think is right is right. And it's just not the case. And it won't be the case, Science is changing all the time. And it's really, if you look at history, it's yesterday that we thought that the Earth was the center of the galaxy, right? Things are proven wrong all the time. And so I just think it's foolish to think that we're right. I think we should always just be open to be proven wrong.
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that because I just did another talk with a awesome person like within the past 30 minutes we just finished, and we highlighted the fact that it's so true how you need to have an open mind when it comes to discussing almost anything nowadays, but no one is like that. Like there's so many people who are just so stuck in their way and they're not wanting to try and understand the other side because in their mind they think that they're right. And they don't want to deviate from that for whatever reason. And it's just kind of, I don't know, I'll say sad almost, because there's so much knowledge and there's so much understanding that can come from just kind of, I guess, humbling yourself, if that's the right term. But, just kind of, humbling yourself and being open to what the possibilities really are.
People don't want to be wrong. Nobody wants to be wrong for some reason. People are, and then I think, a big factor is sort of the popularization and just our ability to connect to one another, which, I talk about this a lot too, like this idea of being able to be connected to everybody at all times and giving everybody a voice, I think is beautiful. I mean, you and I wouldn't be here right now if that weren't the case. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, I think that's our detriment because then we have everybody has a voice. And well, some people maybe shouldn't have one. Some people, they should have one, but it shouldn't be like a lot of people have like hills to die on, and I don't have a hill. There's no hill for me to die on. There's no hill that I'm going to be like, this is exactly what I think. This is 100%. And if you disagree with me, I'm going to fight you to the death for it. It's just not, I'm not going to do that because I think it's foolish. I think it's arrogant. And I think you're right. I think it's, it closes you out. It closes you off. And the next thing you know, you can't have discussion anymore. And I think we are losing discourse. I think discourse and discussion seem like something that's like going extinct and like fading away, unfortunately. And it is sad. I think sad would be a great term to use there.
Yeah. Do you feel like that And just out of curiosity, do you feel like that's some sort of like narcissism within people, or do you think that's just some sort of like ignorance,
I would
or
say
maybe something else?
I would say a blend. I would say a blend of the two. I think narcissism's big, and I think that goes to being raised in the era of the internet, where people feel as though they have a right to be heard and they have a right to be right, and I think that creates a narcissistic view, and I think that creates a lot of ego. I think it sort of inflates your ego, and the next thing you know, you're not there's no openness, there's no ability to even look at other ideas, to even look at other concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's part narcissism. And yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like filters, right?
Yeah,
Like we all
yeah,
have, everything comes through a filter. All of our information is given to us through a filter, and then and then another filter grabs a hold of that information, and then it's filtered through, and then it's filtered through, and the next thing you know, by the time you're getting the information, it's been whittled down to some sort of weird twisted bias.
yeah.
And so I think it really is just, I think at the heart of the internet, and I think like Twitter and these things, like they're really great platforms, but there is, and I don't want these things to be regulated, but I wonder if there is a way to regulate it appropriately without sort of like hindering people's freedom of speech, right?
Yeah. I wonder.
That's go ahead.
I was going to say, I wonder if it's almost just like we need to take a step back as like a society and just kind of like look at what's going on. Because the thing is like I want to agree with you, and I do agree with you in the sense that like there needs to be almost some sort of like moderation when it comes to social media. Because
Sure.
I myself, I hate social media because of the fact that regardless of when you go on, there's always some sort of either like severe negativity. There's some
Mhm.
sort of just like super awful, like I'll say meme for lack of a better term, but just like stupid joke, or I don't know, something stupid along those lines, or it's always something incredibly politicized.
Absolutely.
And it just gets so draining because I go to like Twitter and stuff because I like to just kind of laugh at some of the stupidity in it, like the funny stupidity jokes or whatever it is, or just some sort of funny thing. But I always come across that one person who is just like Black Lives Matter, and then they just go off on a rant. Not
Right.
to say that like that's bad or anything, but just as an example. For
Well, it's overwhelming.
it's just so overwhelming, and it just doesn't make sense to me how some people can just that's literally their hill to die on. Like I
Yeah.
mean, I get it, but I don't, because I wouldn't
I don't.
die on
I
a hill
don't
like
get it
that.
at all. No, no, no. I have yet to find the only thing, I'm sure we'll get into this, but the only thing that I've found that is like the thing that I can really rely on is the fact that I'll die at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my hill, and I can say that comfortably and say it also with confidence because it will be the hill that I'll die on.
almost literally.
Almost literally, or exactly literally. But
Yeah.
so that's kind of the only thing I've found a lot of comfort in like being passionate about, because otherwise I so quickly get like above the passion. I'm like, man, am I the one that's passionate, or is it just like this moment, or is it just this like, or is it just
Oh,
the
yes.
influence of people around me, right?
Oh yeah, it's so
And that's
true.
what I get very in my head about that, and then it's sort of kept me very reluctant from ever really chasing passion, because I'm like, well, what could I be passionate about where it doesn't like close other people off?
Yeah, and it's almost sad that you have to think like that, because you shouldn't feel that restricted.
Right.
But the thing
Well,
is,
that's my own. I think that's just my own neurosis, but
yeah, I mean it. Yeah, like you were saying, it's your own thing, but it's just like it just kind of baffles me the way that everyone's going. I guess is to try and sum all of the thoughts up. It's just weird to me. I don't understand.
yeah,
And I
it
don't
makes
know
me
if I ever
nervous.
will. Yeah,
It makes me nervous because it doesn't seem, it makes me nervous, and also it does like depress me in a way, because I see people make arguments, I see people get upset and frustrated, and just let whatever that is, whatever that frustration, wherever that's coming from, whether it's BLM, or whether it's whatever the opposite of that is, or whatever their argument is, they let their frustration and their upset attitude sort of blind them.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, they're posting things that are regarded, they're posting things or saying things or whatever it is, posted a picture or whatever, and it's coming from that moment, and I think a lot of people struggle to just take a second to be like, okay, is this really what I need to say right now? Is it worth it to put this out there? And a lot of people don't have that and I hate to generalize, but I do generalize often, and I think we've been generalizing the whole time so far, but I think like a lot of people don't have the process. A lot of people over-identify with their thoughts. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'll kind of add on to this is that after the fact that everyone kind of, says what they want to say, which again, especially in America, freedom of speech and whatnot, the thing that really bothers me, and here's the thing, I love to argue, like a healthy argument. I love a good debate. I love that stuff because I feel that when you have two different opposing sides or two different opinions or what have you, and they come together and they butt heads, I feel like that's really the only way to come out with not a perfect outcome, but an outcome that will benefit both sides, where it's probably the right way to go, if that makes sense.
We need challenge.
I definitely do.
We need, and what you're talking about is just civil discourse. It's something we've been doing not only since the dawn of man, but especially if we want to keep it, relevant, since the dawn of America, right? Like the whole idea has been to have different opinions, have different lifestyles, have different cultures, have all these varying degrees of life, and be able to come together, discuss them, disagree with each other, maybe get in a heated debate, but we can shake hands at the end. And we can be friends with each other at the end. And right now, what really sucks, and something I've seen actually personally, and I'm going to agree with you from what you said earlier, I try not to do social media. It's not really my thing. But lately, I think with everything going on, it is fun to check in. And with the election, it was really fun to watch people, freak out and just have these crazy emotional responses. But I've seen, like maternal and granddaughter relationships get disrupted because of their politics. And that's so foreign to me. I can't wrap my head around, allowing who I want to vote for decide whether or not I'm going to be in a relationship with my grandmother. No one's ever agreed with their grandma. That's just, you don't agree with your grandma, It's just not what happens.
Yeah.
And so to let it burn this bridge, to let your political views and your ideologies burn a bridge between someone that is your blood. Now, I don't think it's necessary to be connected with the people that you're related to, but to have, you should at least have some sort of civil relationship, and you should at least be open to hearing what they have to say. But we shut them out, and then the next thing you know, you're in a a thought bubble, and then you're stuck there, and then nothing ever challenges you, and then, I mean, if you want to live that way, great. I don't, but it seems like a lot of people sit in that camp,
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of that to blame is just simply the idea of like, and of course I don't want to pin it just on one thing, but social media and the rise of technology, you're able to kind of just like sit and be isolated. You don't have to have that communicational aspect of what being a human is, like it's great. Technology is awesome because you and I can speak. Like you and I can have this conversation. Sure. We can debate whatever you want, anything under the sun. But, if I was to leave this room and I was to go to speak with my wife, if I do nothing but sit on my computer or sit on my phone and I go try to speak to my wife and she says something and I'm just like, wait, what? Like I'm missing that communication because I'm on this computer the whole time, or I'm on my phone the whole time. And then you start to degrade that idea of real life community and real life dialogue and communication. You don't know how to do that then because you're so used to doing it on a keyboard.
Right.
And it's just
and you disassociate. Exactly.
And
I think something my dad said to me recently was, you can, I can type up a big long thing where I insult you and I berate you and I call you dumb because I don't agree with you. And then I just go and make a sandwich. It's not like, it's not like we're getting in like if we got into an argument face to face, there would be a resolve. Maybe one of us would storm off. It's unlikely, but there would be a resolve, and we'd leave heated, But with with Facebook and Instagram, you're not yelling. It's not like the granddaughter is insulting grandma. The granddaughter is insulting grandma's avatar.
Yeah.
And I think there's a disassociation between like the profile picture and the actual person.
Yep.
And I think I think that gets tricky, and I think it gets I think it's sad. Yeah, I think it it sucks.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate to see the way that our world is going. Because I mean, of course, you want technology for the sake of ease. Like it's so nice to be able to pick up my phone and call my mother or call my brother. That's awesome. But at the same time, there's so many negatives that come with it. It's just like such a weird trade-off, and I just don't know. I don't know the outcome of the next 10 years. Like I don't know what people are gonna do. I don't know if we're literally gonna turn into those people. Like have you seen Wall-E? Like the Disney movie Wall-E. Like I don't know if we're gonna turn into that sort of human race. I feel like we could, given the way that we're going, and given the way that people can't even communicate with one another, let alone debate and argue.
It's funny how relevant Wall-E has been. Wall-E has been relevant since it came out.
Yep.
But now it's having this. I was just talking about Wall-E last night because it seems kind of like the direction we're headed. We're getting coddled and we're getting fattened up and we're getting everything at our fingertips. And then next thing you know, we're not going to have. I mean, I'm not going to have. I don't have any prediction on how long the planet has left, but based on what I hear, if we head this direction that we're heading, it doesn't sound like a long time.
Yeah.
And it's only a matter of time before things get to that point. And I find it fascinating and exciting that Pixar was able to craft something. That was like 2006 or something. 2008,
So if you were to be asked to join, I think it's like in the next 10 years, Elon Musk said that he wants to send like the first group of humans to Mars. Like if you were asked to do that, would you go just cause?
Well, okay. So what's the travel time look like?
Oh goodness, man. I don't know. I would assume it would be a couple months, if anything.
Yeah. And am I getting frozen? Am I going to sleep or what?
I couldn't
There's a
tell
lot of
you.
variables here, Dan.
I have no clue, man. All I know is that he wants to. I know that he wants to send people to the moon in the next. I want to say it's at least 5 years, or maybe that's NASA. Yeah. And then his next goal is to try and start like an early colony on Mars within the next 10.
I think if he asked me, if he came to me, if he knocked on my door right now and he came and he was like, "Hey, D, do you want to go to Mars right now? We'll have you there by January," which is so unrealistic. But if he said that to me and I could just go, I think I'd probably say yes. I'm in a very, for the first time in pretty much the past like decade of my life, I'm riding solo. I'm single. I'm in a space where I could kind of just make that decision and not sweat it. And then, at the end of the day, I'm at Mars. Why not?
Yeah. I mean,
I could be a pioneer.
Yeah, you could be a pioneer, and then you can say that you've been one of the first people to step foot on Mars.
Exactly right. And then also, if we are talking about the end of the world and we're talking about sort of this global situation right now, I wouldn't mind getting away from this.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
Like you can't even go to Hawaii right now, right?
I know.
I mean, I guess you could, but people aren't.
Yeah.
So if someone was like, "Hey, I'll take you to Mars," guess what? There's no pandemic. There's no racism. There's no this. I'm sure, take me to Mars. Yeah. And then you'd likely, it's not going to be a 2-month trip. It's probably going to be like a 9-month, if not longer trip.
Yeah.
You're probably getting a long sleep. I'll take the rest, man. I'll take that nap, I think.
Yeah, that nice long 8-month nap or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice and
cold.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
when you
what
wake
did you
up.
see Ad Astra?
Brad
Pitt.
I think I did. Ad Astra. I have to look that up. I want to say that I saw
flick.
The Martian. Maybe getting that one
that's
confused.
similar. Similar, I guess, in like scope and kind of theme. But
yeah,
Ad Astra does a really great job at having this sort of interpretation of commercial space travel, and it's badass. And I think all in all, he ends up spending, I think it's like 9 years or something to get all the way to Pluto to go and get to find his dad or something. But you should check it out while we're talking about commercial space travel, because it's rad, man. They do a really cool job at like putting them on these like shuttles and stuff, and it's all treated like Virgin America or whatever is running it, and you just go to sleep with strangers, and then you wake up and you're on another planet.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I don't think it's out of the realm. I don't think it's far away.
Yeah, Elon Musk is such an interesting man just because of his ambitions and like what he wants to do with the human race and what he wants to do with space. It just kind of blows my mind to think that like we could end up like, Matt Damon and Brad Pitt like on Mars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, of course theirs was like a set, blah, 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 whatever, but it's just that idea, that concept that, maybe even 10 years ago we were like, oh yeah, Mars, it's up there somewhere. but then we want to colonize it, and we're going to colonize it, or at least try to. Like, that's just so cool. It's so weird to think. Again, technology and the advancements.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trip to think about. I just was thinking about too, because they do a really good job of, like, he lands. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it is cool. He lands on Mars, and he's at like I guess you don't call it an airport, you call it a spaceport, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very commercialized. And then the moon has like, McDonald's on it and shit, and he ends up having to like fight pirates. It's not the best movie from like a plot line perspective, but like visually and conceptually, it's a really neat flick. It's a really, really neat flick. But back to your point to Elon Musk, I think about him, and then Jeff Bezos is another one I think about a lot, who just freaks me out because it's one thing to think about what they want to do outside of the earth, but then you think about what they want to do inside of our own being. Like Elon Musk has these crazy ideas of wanting to, not even ideas, he has these crazy things that are coming into play, and I think will be into play soon. But this idea of like neural link and like mapping out your brain and connecting you to like this interface where you're connected with everybody else, and the next thing you know, what is human? What even is being a human anymore? What is dying? What is living? Like where is that line at that point? And that trips me up a lot.
Yeah, I listened to him on I think it was like back in May or something like that. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I listened to that because Elon Musk, ever since, I don't know, within the last like 2 years, he's just like been super fascinating to me. But he was talking about that whole idea of just like a neural link. Like you would actually be able to some sort of surgery to where they would, like, of course, have to remove part of your skull and whatnot, but they would be able to insert this chip or some sort of, like little tiny, I don't know, computer chip or whatever, for lack of a better term. They would be able to insert it into your brain. And let's just say, like you have Parkinson's or you have some sort of like disability, and you would be able to monitor your body with this chip. And if the chip can detect certain patterns in your brain, like neural waves. I don't know anything about that stuff, but like if it can detect, that, this guy's going to go into, like cardiac arrest or some sort of like heart attack, it would actually be able to then send a shock to your body to try and counteract that. And it's just like, how the heck does that work? Not to mention that's just such a weird idea.
It's a crazy idea. And I think about that. I'm torn on it, because part of me is like, oh, that's cool. Because I know, I think I probably listened to that, and I know he was talking about too, like being able to monitor like OCD, being able to monitor like behavioral issues, and being able to be like, I don't want this part. I don't need this part. I need to keep this in check. But then, that comes back to my question, like what makes us human? Part of the experience here is having the chance to have a heart attack, right? Like, so if we get to the point where we're halting heart attacks, like someone's about to have a heart attack and we're like, oh, nope, no heart attack for you. Is that, I guess my question is that should we be doing those things? Should we be, another example I saw recently was like the old people airbag, where like you strap on this glorified diaper, right? And then it links up to your elbows, and then if you fall backwards, it has like a motion sensor or whatever, or like a proximity sensor, and before you hit the ground, it like poofs up, and next thing you know, you're saved. And then no granddad and no grandma is gonna die from falling down and breaking their hip, which the most of me is like, oh, that's great. But then the other part of me is like, oh, but isn't that like part of the fun? Isn't that part of the risk? Aren't we supposed to die from heart attacks? Aren't we supposed to die from falling down? Should we do all of the things that we're doing and pull all of our money and resources into these things to extend human life to an unnatural number?
Yeah, it almost and of course, depending on who you are and what your belief is, but like I think it's safe to say, like we kind of then turn into the idea of like we're playing God, like we're starting to then dictate when you can and can't die, and then you're almost like keeping yourself alive longer than what maybe was naturally supposed to happen, or right. and not to say that like that's bad, because of course like death is death, and like no one wants to wish death on anyone. And like, of course, you usually don't want death. It's not like something you wake up and you're like, yeah, I think I want to die today. That would be fun. It's not like that happens. But at the same time, it's like, how much can we do to actually prevent something like that from happening before it's starting to play God. And then, of course,
Right.
once that happens, we start to open up into like, say, like, genetic mutations and, like embryonic mutations or like DNA mutations, and all that stuff. And it's like, how far can we really go before we kind of break that moral line, if you will?
Right. How far is too far?
Yeah.
I think we've already, and I think what you just said is very potent. I think we already maybe think we are God, and which I think is a beautiful thought. I do think we are in our own way God, and in my own definition, I think we do kind of like embody God. I think all of us collectively are like this experience together is like the representation of God. But I think, what you just said goes back to what we were saying earlier, is like this idea. It's almost like Twitter and Facebook and all these things are like, you get in these, like, they're religions, right? They're like these religious sects almost. And people think that their word is like transcribed in stone. Like it's like uncovered, like it's like a Dead Sea Scroll or something, and I wonder if maybe we're already at that place, and we all think that we have this like right to it or something. But it does feel like we are kind of approaching that line there of like, okay, well, maybe grandma should just die at 90. Maybe that's what's supposed to happen. If you keep saving her, what's the quality of life at that point?
Yeah. And then, like the scary part is that there's so many people in the world that have so many different opinions on what that moral line is, to where once someone breaks it, who's to say that we can like retract that? You know what I mean? It's if that makes sense. It kind of like maybe
expand a little bit for me.
Yeah. So, let's say with Elon Musk, he wants to start, moving forward with all this, crap that we talked about, right? Who's to say that once we as a human race move towards that point, like Elon Musk kind of initiates it, who's to say that like everyone just kind of goes crazy for it, and then it's just like literally everything opens up to where it's like we're just crossing a bunch of moral lines. You know what I mean? Like we're kind of just waiting to be nudged over that line, and when someone does it, just all hell breaks loose, if you will. Does that make sense?
What do you mean by moral lines when you're saying that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of the idea of like playing God. Like if we were to play God, like, and of course this all I feel like depends on what your definition of like morality is, and kind of like
Sure.
like what you believe.
Well, I guess that's kind of
is.
why I asked. I was like, what is that line, and what are we talking about here?
Yeah. No, I guess I mean more as in the sense of like, once we start to get to that point, if like, like we're trying to defy death, if you will, like we're trying to get to that point to where it's like, we can just, all the bad stuff just isn't there anymore. Like once we get there, like who's to say that, like once we cross that threshold, then everything just kind of opens up. And then it's just like everything goes all chaotic. Does that make sense? Do you see where I'm coming from a little bit more?
When you say everything opens up, what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
I guess I'm being a little too general. But I guess I'm just saying.
I kind of see like a picture, but as far as opening up, like, are we talking like opens up in like we have like, we've reached our like magnum opus, and that's like our point, or like what do you mean?
I guess so, kind of, yeah. I guess that's more so what I mean. I guess I mean more of like a generalized term, and when I say open up, and just like, our technology, then I feel like we'll just like take a step up, and then we'll just go farther and farther down that line of just pretty much what is humanity then. Does that make sense now?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of one of my fears, is like we get to a point where we're secondary almost, which I'm scared of, but then I'm also kind of excited for, because I do like this idea. I feel like right now we're in the space of like, we're all, you drive for Amazon, for example, and then you have like the minimum wage jobs, and you have McDonald's, and you have all these things where people have to do that. It's not a choice. People have to do these jobs, otherwise they can't be alive. And so if we get to the point where all of those things are automated, and you just go to McDonald's and you hit a button and it gets cooked for you, and you don't have to hire a person anymore. The optimistic part of me is like, oh, that's great, because then that opens up you and I to be able to chase our passion and like become a master of a craft, which is what I like to think would happen. I like to think once the robots are in control, then you're going to see more craftsmen. You're going to see more like woodworkers. You're going to see more of like these passionate people taking on these things. But then the pessimistic side goes to the Wall-E thing, where I'm like, oh, or we're just going to end up drinking milkshakes, watching TV, or like Idiocracy is not a great example, but a hilarious example of like how terribly it could go, where we're not reliant on ourselves anymore. And I don't want to live in that space. I don't want to be involved in that. I also don't, I lean talking about like the how far is too far thing. Like I lean in the camp of like, we should let people die. I don't think we should. I think there's a certain amount of interference that's important. And I think, medicine and technology has come a long way, and I think it's great. And I think it's all very, very valuable. But at the same time, I think we do cross a line where we disconnect ourselves from the natural experience. And I think that inevitably leads to us just bickering more, and fighting more and disagreeing more and just looking for these like silly little distractions like we are right now, like everybody seems to be just looking for a distraction from reality. It's like, when was the last time you dug your bare feet into the ground kind of thing? You know what I mean? Like everything's sanitized. Everything has become this like, you die in a hospital, whereas 100 years ago, you died on the farm, like when you died and you knew your time was coming, you got your family to gather around and it was an event and it was something we were close to. But now I just feel like we're not close to the actual human experience. It all seems like whitewashed in a way.
Yeah, it all seems fabricated almost. And like I agree with you in the terms of like, when is trying to delay death or, something along those lines, when is that too much? Because like you were saying, death, it's going to happen. If you don't think it's going to happen, you're an idiot. Like, sorry. Yeah. Like everyone is going to die. There has been like, if you go back 200 years, not a single one of those people are still alive because everyone dies, like that's just a very obvious human trait. You're going, I wouldn't even say trait, but like an obvious thing that's going to happen, like you're going to die. But the thing is like, with modern medicine and stuff, of course it's great, if we have medicine that can treat, some sort of infection or something, it's awesome to try and help people like that. But when, like you were saying, when does, saving grandma, from whatever it is become a little too much? And of course, like you don't want death. Like that's a sad thing for a lot of people. And that's, I think, what the whole idea of trying to delay death is based on. But at the same time, I think you said it earlier, when does the point of, what's that term? I'm trying to think. When do you cross that point of, it's like you're like in a vegetative state almost, like, like let's just say 80 is the cutoff date for death. Once you hit like 85 and you're just kind of there, like what's the point, if that makes sense, if that's what you feel like you are at, like I don't know. I guess I'm starting to ramble a little bit now, but I think it's the idea, like when does death, like when, I'll stop there.
Well, something you just said was, you were like, a lot of people, most people don't want death. And so I guess the question, that I'm trying to answer in my own time and on my own podcast is, if it is something that is inevitable, why can't we look at it as something that's good? Why can't death be sort of this, like, instead of looking at it as like, oh, it's a sad thing to lose grandma. Of course it's a sad thing. I want to hang out with my grandma. I want to spend more time with my grandma. I want to laugh with my grandma. I want to be able to be there with my grandma. Yeah. But her and I both know that that's not a forever thing. Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to seek is, or maybe what I'm trying to manipulate is the conversation around it, which is like, why not wake up every morning and be like, this might be the day that I die, and be excited about that? Like why have we gotten to the point where I think to be fearful of something that's inevitable just seems counterintuitive or silly or something.
Yeah. And I think it all boils down to the simple idea of, what do you believe is going to happen after life? Like, do you believe that there's an afterlife? Do you believe that you're just going to literally cease to exist and you're going to be buried in the ground and the worms are going to eat you? Or do you believe that like there's a higher power or a God and that you're going to go to heaven or, hell or whatever it is? I think that's what it all stems around.
Either way sounds fine to me.
Yeah. And I mean, like,
I will take heaven. I will take hell. I'll take whatever you want to give me. I'll take there's, everybody had their own thing, right? Everybody had their own different concept. I'd take Mount Olympus. I'd take whatever. I'd take Hades. I'll do whatever you want, because I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I'll take the worms though. I'll take, because that's a fact.
Yeah.
That's not something you're not gonna, unless you get, unless you buy a ridiculous $25,000 casket and you get embalmed, which even still, that doesn't prevent you from degrading. You will eventually decompose. Embalming is not foolproof, right? And so eventually the worms will make their way into your head, and eventually your brain will decompose and leak out of your ears. Like, that's just what's going to happen, And so I think we can look at that as like a gross thing, or we can look at that as like a really beautiful thing. And I think it's beautiful because, like, why would you not want to be food for the worms? What else are you going to do?
Yeah.
Let's be food for the worms. Let's be food. Let's be like, let's be nutrition, because we are nutrition.
Yeah. It's just an interesting, thought process, like, I don't know. I again, it just kind of depends on what you believe and what, you think is going to happen. What do I believe?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, like, I'm religious. I'm a Christian. And so I believe that, of course, depending on how you live your life and, given what the Bible says, like, I believe that there's people who are going to go to heaven. And I believe that there's people who's going to go to hell.
Where do you think you're going to go?
I would think, based on what, the Bible says and what I believe in, that I would go to heaven.
Yeah. And what's up? Do you have, so are you like, are you solidified on the idea of heaven? Like, do you think that, the Bible has kind of transcribed this idea and that's where you're going to go? Or do you feel as though there's like a little bit of creativity? Do you have like this choice, or like maybe like settings or something, like, oh, this is what my heaven looks like? Or is there just a general heaven for everybody?
So I think that, and this is where it gets tricky, simply because of the fact where, like, I don't want to, be disrespectful to, like, step on anyone's toes. Because, like, religion is a very, I think it's
hard to not step on people's toes when you have a podcast. That's something I've kind of come to terms with.
Well,
people's toes will be smashed, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of in general, just because of the fact that, like, religion has been such a negative thing in the past because of how much just, like, destruction and negativity has come from it. You can go throughout history, like through Crusades, for example. You can talk to, I like I said, the lady that I spoke with just a little bit ago. We talked a bit about religion. And she said that, like, based on her life choices, her parents were just like, no, and they were religious, and they were just like casting her out pretty much. And so there's just a lot of negativity with religion. And I kind of forget what you asked, but I'll kind of go with this. I think that the, of course, I believe in the Bible and everything. I believe that what it says is what it is. I don't think that there's much room for interpretation except contextually. And so who's to say, though, that, heaven might be a tad different in terms of, just maybe how it looks or something like that. But I believe that, it's going to be, for the most part, where those who believe will go to heaven. And then, given what it looks like, I feel like could be up for debate, because there is no solid, it's going to do this, 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 this. It's going to look like this, 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 this. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of the fun of it. But at the same time, it's going to be, I believe, what the Bible says it is, down to a T, given what it says, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I guess the run-in I have with that is I'd much rather just, kind of, my question was kind of like, do you have any say? Or like, because in my head, I've become very comfortable with this idea of just having a lot of power. I feel as though, like, our brains are very capable of, I think, more than we allow ourselves to think.
Yeah.
And so in my head, I spend a lot of time, I've dealt with a lot of death in my life and a lot of grief. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about these things. And I like to think that, like, the afterlife, whatever it is whatever it is. And, a buddy of mine and I were talking the other day about, like, we were just curious on if you spent time crafting your own heaven, would it increase your chances of, like, being greeted by that, or like going to that place? Because I find it, I'm all for, like, communion, and I'm all for, like, gathering and, like, the whole idea of religion. Like you said, there's a lot of negatives about religion, but they're also, like, and I used to feel very, very frustrated with just like mass religion and organized religion as a kid, because I lost my mother when I was very young.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So my whole thought process was like, why would there be a God if they're just going to take away a young boy's mother? This just doesn't make any sense. So I was very angry at like spiritualism for a long time until recently, really the past like 5 years or so, I kind of developed my own concepts. And I find that to be a lot more fun than having someone like lay them out for me, if that makes sense. Like I'd much rather write my own Bible than like, I don't want to use the term succumb, but that was almost the term I was going to use, but like obey someone else's or like follow someone else's rule book. I'd rather, there's obviously things that we should do, or I think more significantly, there's things that we shouldn't do. There's like don't kill people, don't inhibit other people's things. Like, let's just be nice to each other. I think it's maybe just like the general golden rule, right?
Yeah.
But I think like I find it a lot more exciting to have like power and creativity over the idea of it. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of where I find the disconnect between, myself and say Christianity, because I feel like they came up with it. So why can't I? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it honestly just kind of boils down to based on what you're saying, if I'm perceiving it right and tying these connections together correctly, you're saying, that like why can't I just build my own heaven? Why can't I just, build my own thing? Because I like the fact that I can create this and then I can go to it, right?
Right. Well, not really, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Not really, but yes. Like more like a service level kind of thing, right?
Exactly. Makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Which is all
and so I guess it just kind of, I think it boils down to the end, like, do you believe that there's some sort of higher power? And if so, and then if not, like, what can you do based on that? But if you do believe in a higher power, then shouldn't you live by its rules or his rules or her rules, depending on what you believe?
Yeah. I think I've settled into this place of believing that we are, like I said this earlier, and I almost like negated what I was saying by like referring to it negatively. But I think I've just kind of come to terms with the fact that we are the higher power.
Oh, yeah.
And God, we are God, but we also created God in a way.
Like a figment of imagination kind of thing?
Well, see, that almost makes it sound not real. I think whatever you want to be real can be real, because I think this little 3-pound jelly mass that sits at the top of our being inside of this bone structure, this bone cell, I think is much more powerful than we allow ourselves to believe. And I think that goes back to the beginning of the conversation, which is, I think Facebook, Twitter, the social interaction generally is distracting us from realizing that. And I think if you want heaven to be, if you want it to be 42 virgins and a bunch of, champagne and things like that, you can have it be that if you want it to be that.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from now. I guess I just didn't connect all the dots. But
we
now,
are in control of our own thing. And whatever happens after death can be whatever we want it to be.
Yeah. No, it's
kind of thing.
Yeah. And
so I guess I just I romanticize and get a little bit more excited when I think of the idea of like, like how long have you been doing this podcast?
I've been doing it for a few months now.
Nice. And how do you feel about it? Are you feeling good?
I'm feeling good about it because I really do enjoy just kind of conversing with random people. I find that to be fun because the whole point of the podcast is to kind of understand others, just like how their brain works. Like I never would have thought that you would be so methodical about, everything, and your intelligence level seems rather high compared to others. And so it's kind of cool to, just hear the way that you talk, your verbiage, like what you believe and everything. And that's, again, the whole reason I started this is just because I want to understand people. I want to understand why they think the way they think, and so I enjoy it a lot. I think it's been very eye-opening on many topics that I was a little maybe closed off to. Right. So it's been educational.
I love that. Well, that's the whole idea, right? Is to explore not only other people, but I think inevitably yourself.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of value in that. But I guess the reason I asked that was because, your podcast and your following, that's a religion, right? Like that's a a group of people that have kind of come together that have like this common ground. They have this space to be able to, and you can kind of, it's loose. It's a loose definition, but you can kind of loosely define your podcast as like the doctrine kind of thing. And so I feel like I love the idea of religion. I love most of the ideas of the Buddha and Christ and kind of the things that they preached. But I get confused on why we're letting people from a long time ago dictate things when we're equally as capable. I feel like we're like, here, you take this, you did this, and we're just going to listen to it and believe it. And we can kind of manipulate it. We have like different versions of it. And we have, I don't know, Genesis 2 or whatever, Genesis 4, A New Hope, or whatever it's called. And then we sort of like just take a step back and we're like, and suddenly we're giving the power to someone else. And I don't get that part, because I don't know just because we're surrounded by like microphones and like illuminated screens, and now I have a lamp on my desk and like I have an oven, like all of these things, like, is that what is negating me from being able to like have my own religion? Like, why? I guess has technology made it to where like there can't be a second Jesus, or is that just why was Jesus why did he only happen then? You know what I mean? Or why did the Buddha only happen then? Why do we not see more of those things, more of these like second comings and more of these like examples of like divine beings? Why does that not happen more often? And why are we so comfortable and like complacent with that being the case?
That's a really good question. Because like, if you do think about it, all the religious stuff that happened, regardless of what religion it is, it did happen way back then. The most recent one I think is like Mormonism, which to me is Mormonism is just very strange. But I say all that to say that overall, you don't see a lot of, divine beings or anything except, thousands of years ago, or X amount of years ago, whenever that was. And I think it just kind of, and I don't like to keep saying it kind of boils down to, but I think it does kind of just boil down to the fact that, what's the right way to say this?
It's a difficult conversation.
It is a very difficult conversation, because, here's the thing, like, I could just, like, I feel like a lot of people in my position would just say, well, you just got to believe, you just got to believe in the Bible. But then that doesn't help. And like, I don't want to ever say that, because me saying that is going to do nothing but turn you away, or to turn anyone away. But it's also,
it's not going to sway anyone.
Yeah. It's not going to sway
anyone.
It's not
an argument.
Yeah. It's not an argument at all. But it's also incredibly hard to try and say something to that effect, to say something to answer your question, simply because I'm not sure. I just don't have that answer. Because your thought process isn't necessarily wrong. That's a good question to ask. Like, why can't we see a Jesus now? Like, why isn't there some sort of divine being here now? That would be awesome to see that, for whatever religion it is, because then it would kind of course, solidify that religion.
Right.
But at the same time, it's just like, I think it kind of just boils down to, again, and I hate saying that, but I don't know what else to say, kind of just what you believe is to be the most true religion. Not to say that religion in and of itself is like a savior or a saving sort of thing, but for lack of a better term, what you think would be the best. And I don't disagree with you. You've said a few times, us humans, we're just so, we're powerful beings, because we are. We can do a lot of things, but we also have our limits. And I think based on those limits, we kind of have to then look to see if there is some sort of higher power, just because of those limits that we have. But,
well, isn't the whole idea of Jesus that he's like one of us?
So the whole idea behind it is that, so to give you the really quick thing, and this will probably not do it justice, but for time's sake.
I'm excited to hear your
for time's sake. So of course, you said Genesis, and so I would assume you kind of know that whole story. Adam and Eve were created. And then they were tempted and they sinned, and God kicked them out of the garden. Fast forward a couple thousand years, and
Why did they kick him out of the garden again?
because
I refer to God as they. So
yeah, no, yeah. So pretty much what happened is Adam and Eve were created, right? And then they were living sinless, faultless. A lot of people say without blemish, pure, in the garden with God. And so then when the serpent came, which is known as Satan, he came and he tempted them and caused them to sin. And when they sinned, their eyes were kind of opened, if you will, like metaphorically, their eyes were open and they saw, all these, pretty much the sin that was Satan, pretty much what they saw. And so then God, I'm sorry?
Satan inside of you.
Yeah. Sin nature, if you will.
Sure.
Without getting too theological. And so God is just like, why are you now realizing one of the telltale signs? And I mean, of course, God's all knowing, but he saw that they clothed themselves. And so he's like, wait, why did you see that you were naked? How do you know that? And they're like, well, we were told not to, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, God found out and kicked him out of the garden, right? If you fast forward a couple thousand years,
I thought wasn't it something to do with a snake though?
Yeah. So the snake was Satan. He caused
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
He tempted them. They sinned. And then God kicked them out.
Right.
Very, very short. Very sorry.
Sneaky.
Very condensed
thing.
Sneaky snake.
Yeah.
And so then if you fast forward a couple thousand years, of course, skipping all the prophecies and stuff, you see that God sent Jesus in human form. He's still technically God, which is the whole paradoxical thing of the Trinity, which makes I mean, like, it makes sense, but it doesn't at the same time because it's so hard to try and explain. But pretty much Jesus is God, right? And so when Jesus comes down, he takes on human form, but he doesn't sin because he's God. And so then you have the whole idea of Jesus being crucified, being risen from the dead as a sacrifice for us humans to then be in communion with God again. That's like that's pretty much the most easiest, the shortest, easiest way I can say it without going into like super deep stuff.
Sure, without reading me the Bible.
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I guess the thought that I have is, and kind of where I get, kind of to back up what I was saying of like, why can't I have my own Genesis, or why can't I have my own thing that I create, is in my head, it's like the reason that we haven't seen like new religions start is because you can't, and this isn't to like negate what you're saying or your beliefs, but you can't make up stories now without people knowing that it's made up.
Yeah.
Whereas 2,000 years ago, you could kind of say whatever you wanted. Have you ever seen The Invention of Lying with Ricky Gervais?
No. I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
You should watch that flick. Add that to your list. You have Ad Astra. You have that.
Ad Astra.
I'm going to rewatch Wall-E tonight.
Yeah.
But basically, no one's ever lied before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like modern day. And so he goes to the bank, and one of his first lies is he's just like, yeah. He's like, I want $600. And she's like, you don't have that. And he's like, well, yes, I do. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I guess you do.
Yeah.
And then it just ends up with him creating, he's talking to his mother who's dying, and he ends up being like, oh, there's a place in the sky. He just makes up this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And no one could say he was wrong because no one had lied before. And so I think where I get stuck is like, where my ability to read these religions and read these doctrines and believe it gets troubled is because I think like Harry, if you had written Harry Potter 2,000 years ago, that would be a religion. That would be fact, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I see exactly where you're coming from.
And so why not? Like, so the way that I try to approach, my own podcast is like, I want every episode to be, like you're saying, like I want to drop what I think that I know so I can be as engrossed and enveloped in whatever the idea is, whatever the concept is, and I want to exist in that moment as if that were real. Yeah. So what, I guess, I've already asked the question, but I guess I just run into the not only, it's an issue, but it's also like it also is like me boasting as a human being. Like, why can't I just have something be created from my own psyche that is representative of like something, whether I believe it or not, but is representative of like a magical story, or like this idea of like a heaven and a hell, or this idea of an afterlife. And I think it's just because now we have fact check, now we have Google, and it's like, oh, that guy's lying, but you can't really fact check Jesus.
I mean, like, you bring up a very valid point, because how are you supposed to know that people from 2000, or whatever the time period was, around 2000 years ago, like, how do you know that they weren't just making all of it up? How are you supposed to know?
So that's I wanted to say that too, is I don't think they were making it up. I think it was real for them. Okay. I think whether it was, whether we want to attribute it to natural occurring hallucinogenic substances, or whether we just want to attribute it to like desperation, or attribute it to like melancholy, or whatever it is that they were feeling. Like, I think naturally throughout history, if you look back thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, we've always done this. The Aztec did it, like the Alaskan tribes have done it. The people of Fiji have done it. Like, we've always done this. And so I think it was just like, it was inevitable for us to do it. And then, right. And then also we run into the issue of like translations, I think, get tricky, where you're trying to like translate the word of like the mystics, and having this like crazy mythos be translated from like archaic languages. I think things just get lost in translation, literally.
Yeah.
But I think like, I don't think they were lying initially.
You just think that it's kind of hard to kind of explain your point again, because I guess I'm just a little lost. I'm not entirely sure.
Right now, going back to what I was saying about being distracted, like, we get on Twitter I think Twitter exists, Facebook exists, all the things that we do to distract ourselves, video games, whatever, MySpace, because everybody's on MySpace these days.
Nice one.
Yeah. Even simple things like taking plants, like taking care of plants. I feel like they're all just distractions from our own mortality. And so when we didn't have those distractions, when we were just kind of sitting around, and like things were, we weren't cavemen anymore. So we weren't hunter gatherers. We weren't like concerned about our livelihood every day. You kind of just sit around and you're like, and then you see that distinction too, like between like hunter-gatherer tribes that had most of their gods were, it's animism, right? Like, or I think that's what it's called, where the wolf is your god, right? Like the deer is your god because it is your god. Without that deer, you would not live. So you need that deer, and it is your god. And so I think you just attribute, and we go back to the symbology thing too. I think we just attribute meaning and symbology to the things that are relevant to us. And I think Christianity is a good example of kind of like, not to like, I like how you keep saying, I say boil. I like to boil things down too, but to kind of boil it down, it's just like, we were probably, I think we were just kind of like hanging out, and we were like, well, how do we explain this? How do we explain this whole thing? And then you just kind of start, and you're hanging out with like your apostles or whatever, and you guys are doing your thing, and you're, I know there is some evidence to kind of back up, like, maybe there was some drugs involved, maybe they were hallucinating, maybe they were having, and regardless of whether they're hallucinating or not, our brains are very powerful things by themselves. And then you take a group of like 12 people and you put them together and you put them in a room, and you end up with, Star Wars 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of thing, or you end up with the Bible, Genesis, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And so I think it's all about like your circumstances. And I think we just ended up with what we ended up with because of our circumstances. And, had you been born in Israel or whatever, your whole thing would be different. Your whole concept would be different. So that's why I get, and I don't even know if I have a point anymore, but that's why I get sort of frustrated with this idea of like fighting about it. Because it's like, who gives a shit? Everybody can be right as long as we're not hurting each other.
Yeah.
Everybody's right.
Yeah, no. I agree with you. I think that, it is very hard to try and understand, maybe understand's wrong. You're saying that, yes, you believe that, these guys wrote these things and that they didn't necessarily make anything up, but it could be just some off chance, like it's just weird, like it's hard to believe, it's hard to try and, not make, that sounds bad, but I'll say it, try to not make some sort of excuse, as to why, the scriptures or whatever are the way that they are.
Right.
And I'm just gonna go and say this, it's been, and I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but I did study it for a little bit. Like there's a lot of history that corresponds exactly with the Bible, and there's a lot of different accounts from different people from different areas that do back this up. Now, of course, that I don't want to say is flawed, but it again is that idea, like how do you know that all these people weren't just talking together? And I don't have an answer for that. That's just something that I choose to believe.
So why is it that Jesus Christ walks on water and where everybody's like, okay, cool, I believe you, great that Jesus walked on water, but when David Blaine does it, we're like looking for like a way to like disprove it. You know what I mean? Like, where's the glass? Where's the rope? He's got to have a rope,
Yeah.
Why is David Blaine not the second coming of Jesus Christ? He's done some really impressive shit.
No, I no, it's true. And without, and like, of course, I feel really bad just kind of like, like pounding it out, like just with like Bible stuff. But I think it's the idea.
Sorry if this is not the direction you wanted to go.
No, it's fine. I mean, if I'm being honest, I would have asked you, like, what do you do for a job? Like that's kind of what I like to learn about you. But I mean, like, this is really good. I like this stuff. So this is really cool. This is cool to me.
Good.
But I think back to your point, or back to your question, I think it's honestly because, like, while Jesus was a human, he was also God incarnate pretty much. And so there's a difference between, being a deity, if you will, being God, and being David Blaine. And, it's not that just Jesus walked on water. Like, he did do that, but he also, can command the winds. Like he for example,
command the winds.
So
is that what you said?
Yes. Command the winds. In that same passage, when he was on water, there was a giant windstorm going on, and, I can't remember. I think it's in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've opened up that particular part of the Bible. But he also tells the winds to like stop, and they stop. And like
nice. That's cool.
Yeah, and so there's other things that he has done, given he is Jesus. Like for example, the night before he was nailed to the cross, there's a bunch of Roman guards that came to attack him and to capture him I shouldn't say attack, more so capture. And one of his disciples took out a knife and cut off one of the guy's ears. And the guy was like, freaking out. And Jesus is like, why do you do that? And he was able to take the ear on the ground and put it back on the guy's head like nothing happened. And so and of course it all, and I hate saying boil down.
Boils down to.
It boils down to.
You gotta change the name of the podcast, man.
We gotta change it instead of across the pond, what it boils down to. But it's the idea, like, of course you have to believe in that sort of stuff, the miraculous, if you will. But if you do end up believing in that, you can see that there is a huge difference between Jesus and David Blaine, or Jesus and, Albert Einstein, or, someone different, just because, it is God just in human form. He still has the same restrictions that a human would, but he's also got that godlike thing. I'm sorry, I don't know what that word is, but he's also got that power, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
So, I mean, again, if you choose to believe all of that, that would be the answer. But if you don't believe that, then I'm not sure how you would answer that.
So you just said choose to believe. So are you choosing to believe these things, or is this something? Are these all things like were you raised this way, or are you choosing kind of consciously that this is what it is, and this is, you're going to heaven and all that?
That's a good question. And I say choose to believe because I know that a lot of people don't believe in that at all. They try and disprove it. You have atheists. You have people who just refuse to believe that for whatever reason. And I say whatever reason, not in a what's that word? It starts with a D, and I can't even think of it. Bad way. I don't mean that in a bad way. I can't think of the other way. Maybe derogatory. Yeah, but
maybe derogatory. Demeaning.
Demeaning. There we go. I don't mean that in a demeaning way. It's just if you choose not to believe it, you choose not to believe it. But I do choose to believe it. I do think that stuff did happen, and I do believe what the Bible says, and it is a choice ultimately, because I do believe that we, as humans, have a choice to believe in that or to not believe in that. And
right.
I guess I just don't know what else to say after that. But I do think that it is, for the most part, a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I wasn't raised religious. I think I didn't step foot into a church until I was like 12, and then it was for like a summer camp.
Yeah.
And I got put on a baseball team. We were called the home run hitters for God.
Nice,
nice. Which I always thought was so ridiculous because I wasn't good. So I was like, you chose me, really?
Yeah.
Like you could add anyone out of the whole town, and you chose me as your pitcher. That just doesn't make any sense. But thank you. And so I think I just have, not having been indoctrinated and not having been sort of raised this way, I think I just have it's easier for me to make the choice of kind of, I shift pretty much every day. And so I kind of just believe different things every day. But I think really the main point is what it boils down to, Dan, is I think we need to be able to look at these thoughts and look at these processes and look at these ideas, take what you like, and then get rid of what you don't. And then everything's kosher. You know what I mean? Like you can, and I think I get troubled by the idea of you have to be, you're either a Muslim or a Christian or you're a Buddhist or whatever. Where's the mix? You know what I mean? Why can't we have the blend, it's called syncretism. Why can't we syncretize a little bit more and have it be like, oh, I like what the Buddhists say. I like what Jesus did. And I like what Allah has to say, but I don't like everything Allah says. I don't like everything Jesus did. And I don't want to have to meditate or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think we run into this problem where it goes back to really the jump of the podcast, man, which was talking about labels. It's we run into an issue oh, I'm a vegetarian.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You don't have to be, you don't have to be a vegetarian or a carnivore. You could be a vegetarian that sometimes eats meat, you can be someone that really likes salads, but also likes to hunt kind of thing. And I think we run into this strange issue of wagging our finger at people that don't pick the side. And then and that comes from everything, red and blue to whatever, And so I think what I try to do is syncretize, and I try to have a blend, and I want to have my ears open, and I want to have my mind and my heart open for what people have to say and what people believe, because if they believe it, which it sounds like you genuinely do, I love it. I love hearing people express excitement about what they believe. And that's what I want to do. And that's, I think, what I want. If there's anything that I can pass on to other people, it's that. Just be open to the other things that people think and the other things that people feel, and realize that we're all the same thing.
Yeah. No. And the thing is I can't tell you if you're right or wrong, because who am I to tell you, no, you can't do that, or yes, you can do that, or no,
I think
you shouldn't
chances are high that we're all wrong.
I think yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all wrong, but that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. We're allowed to be wrong. We're allowed to say things we don't mean. We're allowed to, it's not life or death just because you said something maybe you didn't mean, or you said something offensive on accident. We're allowed to. We're human beings. Yeah, we're allowed to make mistakes.
It makes us humans. If we didn't have that, then we would be if we weren't allowed to do that stuff, and we weren't allowed to, I shouldn't say allowed to make mistakes, but if we couldn't make mistakes, then we would just be autonomous. We would just be like robots. If we were just perfect beings, then what's the point of living? You know what I mean?
Right. It's not fun.
Yeah. There's no consequences. There's no growth. There's no nothing. It's you're literally just some sort of robot, and you just do what you're programmed to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not into it. I don't like it. Yeah. I think I feel like at the jump of this, we were kind of I get into this issue, and it's a tendency really to talk harshly on this generation, even though I'm a part of this generation and I'm very immersed in this generation. But going back to the Neuralink, going back to going to the moon, I like to think that we're going to get to the point where sure, Elon Musk is passing out Neuralinks and you can sign up to live forever. But given that choice, I hope and want and sit in the space more often of people will turn that down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I think generally, genuinely, and at the end of the day, we all are looking for a human experience. And there's a lot that's happening right now that is not human. It's like you're saying, it's like this weird autonomous sort of automated existence
Mm-hmm.
where like you log in and you do your rounds and you say your things and you like the things you're going to like, and then you retweet the things you're going to retweet, and then you sign off, and then you get back on, and back and forth. And people don't, I think inevitably people don't want that. People don't want to be a product, but I could be wrong. But I do like to have like an optimistic view of like the direction we're headed. And I hope that we don't end up in the chairs of Wall-E, because I don't, it seems treacherous to me. And it seems like, I don't know. I think it's an optimism that I like to sit in, and it's an optimism that feels good. But then I get worried about, I'm like, am I too optimistic? Is this something that the mass population will think? Will good overcome bad? And can we come out on top as like a natural creature, but I don't know. I do worry about like some of the potential, which this is an oxymoron. I was going to say potential inevitabilities, but I do worry about like,
That's a good
about
one.
like, yeah. About, I don't know. It's all a choice, man. And I really just, I hope that we make the right choices kind of thing going forward. So.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. I agree with you. Like you say, you don't want to talk crap about this generation, but this generation, they're a bunch of morons, dude. Like, if we're being honest,
How old are you?
I'm 26.
Okay.
This generation, they're so. Here's the thing. For at least from my understanding of it, I'm a little bit older than you, just by a little bit, and so being around that.
Oh
extra,
yeah, I forgot I told you my age. I forgot I disclosed that information.
Yeah, don't worry, I won't say it. But
you can. I don't care.
Being just a tad older than you, I have quite a lot more life experience. Not really.
Yeah, you've been around the block.
Yeah, I've been around the block, maybe once or twice more. But just being alive, around the same ages, or around the same time, like I think we can look back and we're just like, this generation is just so messed up in so many different ways. Like, I don't even know where to start. And it's just really scary to see where they're going to be going forward, simply because of the fact that there's so much, the discord between everyone is so negative, and it is just so rough and just so hateful and spiteful and logically flawed that I'm just worried about this upcoming generation. And I think then it kind of maybe falls back on us, or maybe our parents or something like that. And like I'm not too educated in that whole idea, but I'm just worried about what's going to happen. And then not to mention, just and I'll say this, the stupidity that comes from COVID, just like the kids are having to do online school. And like I'm not saying that like this is a sole example, but it is a benefiting in terms of the argument factor that these kids, like, they have to do online school, but they're not freaking doing online school. They're just sitting there, dude. Like they're there to get a attendance point or whatever it is, and then they check out. Like, let's be honest. Right. And so the generation that's coming up, dude, like, I'm scared. I'm just worried that they're going to make a bunch of rash decisions. They're going to make a bunch of flawed choices because they don't know better. And again, that is all life. Like, your life is about choices, but I feel like they're not educated enough to make the choices that they will have to make, and I'm worried about that.
I see what you're saying to an extent, but I haven't interacted with someone. The last time I probably interacted with like a 15-year-old was like a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. But some of the like 15-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, even I have two younger half siblings, one of which is about to turn 7.
Nice.
I think he's about to turn 7. But I think having the access to the internet, as long as it's regulated, allows you to be a hyper genius. I really do. And I think we're seeing more and more. I think, I don't have the stats, but I think we are seeing more and more people being born on a spectrum. And I think for a while there was this idea like, oh, my kid has autism, fuck me, this sucks, that I hate that my kid has autism. It's so bad.
Yeah.
But I think there's like this connotation and there's this idea behind autism that maybe isn't right. I think having kids that are autistic might be good, and I think we're going to end up with because I feel I know what you're saying, and I feel the way you're saying, but at the same time, I do think we're going to end up with like a generation of leaders and a generation of really really smart kids because they were born with an with I was going to say this earlier, but the internet is like our fire. It's like the new fire, right? Like we got fire, and we learned, and we misused it for the first. We used it really well initially, and then from like 2000 and I would say like 2006 or 2007 to now, probably to a couple years from now, we've misused it, we've mistreated it, we've taken it for granted. But I do think like being born with all of like with an encyclopedia in your hand, with all of the world's information at your fingertips, can only be good. I think it can only be good. And as long as you can, as a parent, it's your responsibility as a parent, but as long as you can regulate that, and as long as you can moderate it and be like, here, you have an hour a day, or, I don't know, however you do it. But I think there is a lot of potential. And I think it's not even, and I don't think this, I feel that, I guess I would say, I think more in your ballpark, which is like, I think that we are dumb and we're getting dumber, but I feel like we're getting smarter, and I feel like we're setting up a badass generation, man. I really do. Like I said, so like the younger kids that I've interacted with, like, blew me away. They like blew my head off. I couldn't even compete with them in an argument. He was like talking to me about, he asked me when like the first Macintosh was made or something, and I was like, and he like stumped me, and he had all this trivia about like computers and all this trivia about these things. And I couldn't even compete with him. And, and he was like this little, like, like you're saying, he was like this little robot man that had like infinite information, and I was overwhelmed. But I think that's good. I think we want kids to be that smart, and I think they're headed in that direction. I also think like they've been able to, I think there's this like worry that like, like back in my day, like, and there's this idea that like history will be forgotten, and like, oh, things used to be different. But having everything at your fingertips and be able to like be a 6-year-old that can learn about the Holocaust and can learn about sharks and all of these things, which those things were available before. But now it's like, if you're a 6-year-old and you have a tablet, you can know more about sharks than anyone else on the goddamn planet. My little brother knows more about sharks than anyone I've ever met. He comes to me with new shark facts, and I'm like, wait, really? Is that really what sharks do? That blows my mind. But I think, I don't know, man. I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic, and I think there's like a gap. I think like the generation that you're referring to, and I think that's another problem, goes back to the labels. I think the generational thing doesn't make any sense. I think like putting these little labels on the generations, like the numbers don't even make sense. Like Generation Z is like,
true.
They're nonsense. They don't represent anything, like, and so I think like we label it, but I think there was like a gap, I think from like 2007 to like 2014 or 2016 or something. Even still now, these numbers are arbitrary, but even still now, like, we have, what I was going to say originally is, do you think that the things that you're like, the way that you feel and the way that you think about like our generation right now, do you think it's because the examples that you see are just the loudest people?
Yeah, and I should clarify. I don't mean stupid as in literally stupid, as in...
I know.
Yeah, I just felt like I should say that. But I guess I mean more so in the fact that like some of the examples that we see being set forward, or some of the examples that we see, I feel like it's just so... man, what's a good word? Shoot. I guess I'm just worried because we see so many people who are just so outspoken about literally everything. It doesn't matter what it is.
And I think we run into the problem of allowing those loud voices to represent mass groups.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm kind of trying to come from. It's just like I'm worried that the loudest people, regardless of what the rest of the population believes, the loudest people are speaking up based on social media, based on whatever it is, and these kids are seeing it. This younger generation, not to label, but younger generation is seeing it, and they're thinking that that's what the populace is agreeing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think what I lean on and what I hope for is that the loud people don't matter, and it's the behind the scenes people that are going to change things.
Yeah. I think
you know what I mean. Like the quiet people are going to be the ones that shift the way that the situation is, and the way that, you know, if however you want, you know, whatever the problem is at hand, whether it's global warming or like the, you know, people are talking about the death of democracy or whatever the hell they're thinking.
Yeah.
I think inevitably it's the quiet people that shift that, and it's the quiet people that make the change. Maybe I don't know, but maybe that's how it ends up playing out, because, you know, there's certain camps that I sit in where the loud people are screaming, and the things they're saying have nothing to do with what I think, but they're representing whatever group that may be, you know? And I think the people that are loud they're not thinking for themselves.
No, and I agree with you 100%. And that's what I got. I don't know what else to add to that one. I think it's good.
Well, it's just we're, you know, it's crazy times, man.
Yeah, it's very
things
crazy.
are not like they've ever been. You know, at least in, I know you're so much older than me, but at least in like the, at least in the.
Okay, dude. Back in my day in 1980.
At least in like, you know, in my day, really, it you know, even 9/11 obviously doesn't even compare to what we're seeing right now, and you know, it is weird to say that, because I do feel that way. I do think that often, where I'm like, back in my day, but even though I am young, I'm 25, but even at this point, I do feel like back in my day, I'm like, back in my day, things were different and they were better.
Yeah.
It's weird to say that.
No, it's true. You know, it's been super weird, even within the last, say, like 5 years, just to see the social growth of humans, and just how, you know, like I can remember when I was younger and playing video games with my friends, you know, like we would just, you know, like, oh, that kid's retarded, you know, like, don't be stupid. And like, that wasn't necessarily an insult. It was just like, or it wasn't socially unacceptable. It was just an insult, you know, it's just like, oh, you know, that's retarded. You know, like, that was just something that was said. And now if you say that, you're crucified, dude. Like, you're excommunicated from society.
Yeah, I love the word retarded. It's one of my favorite words.
I mean, like, if I'm being honest, I still say it. I try not to, at least in earshot of anyone, because I don't want to be rude, but I still say it to myself. I'm like, that kid's so stupid. Like, that's, that's just retarded.
It's all situational, man. You're not going to say you're retarded to a retarded person, but you're going to say retarded to the guy that just, you know, killed you in Call of Duty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know,
or the guy driving that didn't put his blinker on is a retard.
Gosh, I hate those people. Or the ones that leave their blinker on and you're like, hello, are you going to turn?
Right.
Oh, I can't stand those people. Can't stand them. All right. Well,
retarded is not insulting mentally handicapped people. Retarded literally means, like, are you slow? Like, what are you doing? What's happening? Why are you not thinking right now?
Yeah. But
I get upset at the idea that we're not allowed to say that anymore, because I think it's a great term. So
I say that, though, to say, you know, like, it's just kind of crazy to see, you know, just the, not even coming of age, but like just the mental shift, the social shift that we're seeing even within the last 5 years. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's
how
rapid.
People are coming. Yeah.
Well, so I guess, you know, to wrap it up, I think that's great. You know what I mean? Like, you're saying it's crazy how quickly things shift and how quickly we go downhill, but isn't that a great sign that maybe we can shift quickly and go uphill? You know what I mean?
Potentially. I
hope so.
It boils down to, I think it just boils down to, you know, the overall mentality of people trying to get
along.
Are you
a chef?
Yeah, dude. I'm Chef Dan over here. I'm cooking up a good pot of gumbo, just a bunch of different things mixed together, trying to solve it. But
lots of boiling.
Yeah. I think it really does, though, matter where we, and to kind of wrap this all up, I think it does come to the fact that people just need to understand to try and get along, and to try and just be open about things and not be so freaking closed off about whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much disagreement and hateful discord between everyone nowadays. You can't walk down the street and say hi without someone being like, why are you sexually assaulting me? And I'm like, I literally said hi and smiled to try and be nice. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much hate and spite and just...
Well, right now the problem is you can't even see people's smiles, so you don't even know what people are thinking these days, man.
True.
You know, like, the mask thing really does, like, take away a massive chunk of, like, how we communicate, I think.
It really does. And it's also kind of funny to, like, because, like, what I would do is I'll put on a hood sometimes, especially if it's raining, with a mask on, and then I, like, walk into a store and I'm like, there's no one that's going to try and beat me down because I look like a robber. Everyone else looks like one. It's just such a weird time we live in, man. I don't know if I like it at all.
No, you hide your identity.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. My favorite thing about about going out is looking at people and like investigating them and watching like there's so many muscles in your face that move, and we're like cutting that in half, and then it's really hard to like read people, which is sucky, but on the same token, it's fascinating to be able to like, okay, well, how do I interact with this person now?
Yeah.
You know, the way that I feel like I have to, or the way that like I'm wired to do.
Yeah.
So
it's
weird, man.
It's hard for me because I'm such a mouth reader. Like I have a problem hearing sometimes, just like, and I don't know why. It's just like I'm hard of hearing. And so whenever I'm talking with someone, I'll like read their mouth, and now I can't do that. So I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, what did you say? Like, please remove your mask so I could hear your words. And it's just,
well, there's a mask, and then there's plexiglass, and then you have to stand 6 feet, and you're like, we might as well be texting each other right now, or like have like signs. You know, we need like I need like a dry erase board.
Yeah, dry erase board. You know, hold up a radio, John. Yeah, hold up a radio and try and play the song that exemplifies what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's That's a step backwards, but yeah, I like that idea.
That'd be good.
It'd be like it'd be like Bumblebee.
Yeah,
Transformers when he's using all the cues with the music.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, I loved this conversation. This was really good. I was definitely not expecting it to go down this way, but I am going to wrap things up.
What were you? Well, I know you're wrapping it up, but I am going to ask you what were you expecting, because I know you've said that twice now.
Well, so usually what I do is I like to just kind of learn more about you. I mean, I did learn a lot about you, but I in terms of like, what do you do for a job? Like why you chose to go down an education path compared to, no education path, or why do you want to live in so place? Kind of like more of like a basic kind of interview, even though I don't like calling these interviews, but more of like a basic kind of thing. Just because it's interesting to me to see, the path that you went down in life.
Sure.
But I mean, like, this was really good too, because like I said, I wasn't expecting any of this. I wasn't expecting to go super far down into the whole, social thing and, religion and all that. That was cool. But yeah.
Well, if there's anything that I try to do is to, if you have an expectation, I want to not meet it, whether that's go beyond it or not even come close to it.
Yes.
But I also like to, if there is an expectation, just kind of dodge it, kind of thing.
It's good.
It's nice. Really well, cool. That feels good. I'm glad to hear that.
No, I really did enjoy this. I would ask you one question, but you already answered it. But I'll ask you again so you can reiterate it. What's a piece of advice you want to give to someone?
I think the advice, the advice that I would give to everybody, not just to someone, but to everybody, is really, I think, perfect too, because this conversation kind of flowed in a direction that this can just encompass all of that. But it's a old school like Buddhist idea of just, if you want to understand people, you have to drop what you think you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think the quote is literally, understanding is to throw away your knowledge, and knowledge is to be defined very loosely. But anything that you think or feel that you are positive on, whether you believe it or not, when you're interacting with someone, just set it back, just put it on the back burner, and be open for discussion, because there's nothing that you can be 100% certain of. And I guess I would just recommend and encourage people to step away from your beliefs, so you can learn more. Otherwise, I think you're stunting yourself if you don't do so. So, and I think that's kind of what we touched on here all day. So,
can you unplug your mic real quick and plug it back in? There's like some weird popping.
Oh no!
It just started, so don't feel bad.
Okay, thank God. That was my other question, was what the quality was like.
No, you sound great. It was all solid until like maybe 30 seconds ago.
How about now?
I think you're okay.
Yeah, no more popping.
Very slightly, but that's okay. It's all good.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it might just be like the USB from the back of your computer. I know sometimes I get that problem. But so real quick, go ahead and plug whatever you want. Like you said, you have a podcast and stuff, so go ahead and plug that real quick. Oh. Hello?
Hey.
There you go. I think that fixed it.
Sorry. Cool. Yeah, sorry about that. Nice.
No, it's all good.
I'm glad we can edit that out.
Yeah, it's all good. So real quick, go ahead and plug whatever you want. I know you said you had a podcast, so whatever you want to.
Oh yeah. Well, that's really the only thing, man, is I have a podcast called On Death and Smiling. And the goal with that is to approach death with with a smile on my face. And death is something that I've become quite familiar with. I lost my mother when I was 17, and my brother actually earlier this year in May.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And yeah, I appreciate that. The goal is to kind of change that too. Like I want to change people's response to that. When my mom died when I was 17, there was all of these like, oh, I'm sorry for your losses flooding in, and it just didn't register with me. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because if she hadn't died, I don't know. I don't think that I'd be a fraction of the human being that I've kind of made myself into.
Yeah.
And the same goes for my brother. If my brother hadn't died, though it's tragic and I miss him and I'd love to have him back and I'd love to be able to hang out with him and spend time with him, the podcast wouldn't exist. The way that I situate myself and live my life wouldn't exist. And I think we can, and it goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, but I'm trying to change the conversation. I'm trying to shift the idea to maybe we can have a little bit more gratitude for death. Maybe we can find and shine some like bright lights on death and make it a more positive experience. So yeah, that's on Spotify. That's on iTunes. It's, I don't want to say wherever you get your podcast, but mostly wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
And yeah, we explore history. We explore, I like to bring guests on, and hopefully, if this went well, Dan will be, you go by Dan or Daniel?
It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe Dan will be interested in coming on and talking about his experience with grief. And yeah, so the goal is to just kind of explore all avenues, all belief systems, and then just be creative about it and be, have it be a little bit more lighthearted of a conversation. I think we sanitize death and we stigmatize it and we turn it into like a taboo subject. Mm-hmm. And my goal is to be able to talk about it openly and with a smile on my face, and hopefully a smile on yours as well. So yeah, that's what I do. So
yeah, I mean,
I appreciate the opportunity to hang out, man. This was fun. And
yeah,
I think we could probably do this again, and maybe next time you can ask me what I do for work and all that.
Yeah, I mean the basic stuff or whatever.
Yeah,
but, I mean, go ahead and like shoot me an email and stuff, and we can try and set up a time if you would like me to guest on yours. I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how little of a I'm glad we did this because I was curious about how Zoom would like perform, and I don't hear any delay at all. I feel like we're totally in tune.
Yeah, I feel like there's very, very slight delay. It's weird because like I've had people from across the world through Zoom, and it's almost instant. Like their servers are really freaking good. But then I have people on Discord, that are Midwest. Me being Seattle and them being Midwest, and there's like a 5-second delay, and I'm like, wait, what? So it's
weird.
It's really weird. But Zoom works well. I found it works well. The only thing that sucks is that if they don't have a good mic, the quality is a tad scuffed. But for the most part, like it's still easy to understand. It just doesn't sound the best.
Sure. But, I was listening to I think her name was Issa.
Yeah.
That episode. And yeah, you could kind of tell she was just like talking into her computer or
yeah.
something, which is cool. And I like kind of like the contrast between different episodes and all that. But I would always kind of hope for someone to just be set up with high quality recording equipment. But
yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and like I can't make. But I see exactly what you're saying. Like I would love that, but at the same time, I understand that people don't have microphones and stuff. But
sure.
It is what it is. Anyway, I do want to say thank you for doing this, and thank you for the good like hour and a half long. Just
I can't believe it's been an hour and a half.
It's crazy. Like so usually what I end up doing is I just like end up watching levels and stuff the entire time, and the little time thing where it says record is like right under that, and I didn't look at it it felt like 5 minutes, but then an hour and a half went by and I was like, excuse me, what? Like that was just so fast.
Nice.
It was so
that makes
good.
Me feel good. It makes me, because I don't really get nervous to do these things, but this is like my first like guest appearance, quote unquote. And so there was like a moment earlier this week where I was kind of nervous.
Yeah.
And then as I was getting on here, I was like, man, I'm going to have nothing to talk about. There's nothing I have to say.
Don't worry. I mean, if anything, you're the one that carried the conversation. You're just like, oh, so what do you think about this? I was like, oh, okay. A little antsy. Well, I like it.
There's something about, I think you have a really excellent voice. I think a very like comfortable, like warm, like radio voice.
Thank you.
And so it's I would give you a lot of the credit as well. So I appreciate it, Dan. This has been fun, and I feel like we could be friends outside of this.
I think so too.
Personally,
I think so too.
I love the time we live in, because this wouldn't happen.
Exactly. It's better than trying
like
to
80 years ago, we'd be like beeping on we'd be like beep, 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 beep,
yeah, a little
beep.
snail mail. Rip.
But
awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time, and I look forward to hearing this and your future episodes. And
well, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Again, shoot me an email. If you want me to guest, and we'll try and work out a time. Just a little FYI, probably be about mid-December or something like that, which would be the best for me. But again, I'll have to look at my calendar and whatnot. Yeah, I actually have. I have a lot of stuff, a lot of chit chats that I'm doing within the next like 2 weeks, and my work schedule is super. Like I can get off really early or I can get off really late, and I'm not too sure. So I try to not schedule anything Tuesday to Friday.
Right.
Given today is Friday, but I just got lucky, and so with that said, I try to just do weekends, and so my weekends are usually like solid. Like I think I have three or four Saturday and Sunday, just to try and get them all done, so then I can just click publish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
what's your main, like, you have guests and people coming on? Are you just typically, because I found you on Reddit, so is that like your medium for finding people, or what's your typical approach?
Yeah, I just put the post or the form on Reddit. I've tried different pieces of social media, but the following there isn't very big, and then not to mention with Reddit, anyone can view it just like out of the blue. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Reddit's the best.
Yeah, it's just
when
easy.
we were talking about earlier, when we were talking about like moderation and how can you create an internet where it's moderated but not like authoritative.
Mm-hmm.
My comment was going to be Reddit I think does the best example of how you create communities where it can be moderated but not like suppressed kind of thing.
Yeah, it's true.
Reddit's the best.
Yeah, you don't need a following and stuff.
Yeah. It's a good space.
Yeah, it's a good medium. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Dylan, for doing this. Like I said, I had a blast.
This was fun.
Yeah.
I almost don't want to hang out with you. That's why I keep asking more questions.
It's all good, dude. I'll be the man. All right, the older one, the wise one, and end this. All right, because I actually am gonna go eat dinner. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I already ate. Cool, brother.
Yeah, awesome. Well, take it easy, man. I hope you have a great weekend. And then shoot me an email with what you want me to put in the notes, and we can work out a time for your podcast.
What I want you to put in the notes, what does that mean?
So like, your links to your
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Your podcast
cool.
or socials or whatever you want, and
absolutely.
then I'll just copy and paste those in my show notes. So
sure. Yeah, I'll send you a link, man.
Awesome, sweet. Well,
right on, brother.
Take it easy, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. You do the same. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bud.
Dylan's a cool guy, man. I like the idea of being open-minded. It's good because you are able to then try and figure out what you actually believe or what you actually want to understand, if that makes sense. Very, very good talk. Definitely, like I said, not the way I thought it was going. I thought we were just gonna, chit-chat and learn a little bit about Dylan, but we learned a lot about Dylan. Learned a lot, and I feel like we stirred up a really good pot of conversation. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Across the Pond. If you enjoyed this episode a lot, please check out some of my other episodes. I've had some great conversations with a ton of people on a variety of subjects. If you know of a friend or a family member, or even maybe that one person that's not really part of your family, but they are, like that uncle, and you think that they would like an episode, please share it with them. I want to thank Mark for the logo, and I want to thank the Black Couch label and All the H for the music. And I want to thank you, the listener, for giving this about an hour and a half of your time. I really do appreciate it. I want to ask one more thing of you. If you can, on whatever platform you're listening on, please leave a rating. I have episodes that come out every Sunday and every other Thursday. Tune in next time for another awesome episode of Across the Pond.